Hello guys, you thought 29 hours was long. you won't see what week 5 looked like. It was ridiculous. I stopped counting after 30 hours, although I did sneak a 4-hour nap. Executive power nap. Very, very long coding session. Got loads done though, but have my fair share of problems as well that I've dragged along with me. I'd like to have done more, but I really just ran out of time and I had to start pulling the blog and the videos together so you can see where I'm up to. I would have liked to have shown you more, but all I'd end up showing you is errors and dialogues with errors in them. So I'm going to just have a quick run through of the stuff that I have done. I saw the biggest news for Blog 5 in the app is voice recognition. Not easy. When you start working with the voice SDK, you find out why it's not easy. But I persevered and I came up with a few little tricks in order to make it work for me. So I'll include some details about that in the blog if you're interested. But we have voice control now. So the idea is you can get your Ultrabook and bend it backwards, the Yoga 13, plonk it on a desk and then just start pretty much talking to it. You wouldn't need to use your hands to make a conference call. So you can say something like host or call. If you say call, it shows you your contacts. You say the name of the contact. It phones that person. You establish communication. You start talking. And then when you finish with the call, you just do some crazy gesture and end the call. So that's in the software right now. So voice recognition was great fun to work with. It was one of the really nice points that I noticed was I was testing on my main machine and I was sort of on another machine doing some sort of secondary tests, and when the primary machine booted up into the software, I was still typing on the second machine and I just looked over to the first machine and said host. I could control that machine just with my voice whilst working on a completely different machine. So it's very cool indeed. So you'll get to play around with that at GDC next week, and of course when you get to the final app at the end of this competition. I've also added another scene, so you don't just have the boardroom now, you have sort of a gothic medieval church scene, so you're in this big oak table. So that's a nice little bit of eye candy that you can look at. I've also got depth both ways. What that means is the camera will get the depth data, it will crunch it down to something manageable and realistic. If anybody remembers last week's blog, the wireframe was so close together, it was practically per pixel. Well, didn't need that much 3D data, so I've reduced it, and that's the depth data. It's being sent to the second client, and then the second client sending its whatever data, depth data, back to the first. So that's established. You'll notice in the videos that you see that'll attach to this one that the quality is not on par. That's really because when you reduce things down, you lose quality. But hopefully once I've got the texturing sorted out, which brings me on to the next thing. I ran out of time to do the texturing, which is instead of carrying the colour data from the camera as diffuse vectors within the 3D mesh, which was really great, but then you needed 300 vertices across just to actually see the detail. Instead what I'm doing is a much lower resolution mesh and then mapping it with a texture and then sending that texture information over. Now I've had some early successes with that, but I want to do more. I want to get it compressed. I want to be able to just grab the images that I need and then send those and then map those nicely and elegantly onto the 3D model. So you won't see that in this one, you'll see that at GDC and of course the final app. I also got sound working, so you could actually have blah 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 and it would send that sound packet to the machine and you can hear it and vice versa. The quality is not brilliant and the lag's not brilliant. For example, I'm sending the depth data and what you're drawing on the screen with TCP, and I'm sending the voice through UDP. Now if anybody knows about network stuff, those are two completely different things. One is guaranteed, one is non-guaranteed packet transfer. And what that boils down to is they actually hit the machine at different times, which isn't great because your video's racing ahead and then you might hear what you've just said 3 seconds after that. It's not acceptable. So I'm going to do a single packet that carries the whole data. And again, that's something I need to wrestle with in order to get it all in. So it's a nice coherent experience. But the good news is it's in, it's working, it's just not great, and I would like it better. So I'm going to be working on that. But it's great that it's in and working, which I'm quite pleased about. I've got down here device OS 7, 8 compatibility. Ugh, I tell you, the biggest reason I think why I'm sort of been up against it this week is I decided to start expanding out to different devices. So my Windows 7 touchscreen desktop, the new Ultrabook, the Yoga 13, the old Ultrabook that I got a couple of months ago. And every single device has something different to complain about. So you'll run an app that works great on this and then it complains about that, so then you have to fix that. Which of course means installing the SDK on all these different devices, and that takes forever. So lots of little compatibility things to get sorted out before it becomes what you would call an app you could buy. So really got through all that, and I've got a little bit more before I'm happy with the stability and the compatibility of it. Also, the communication only really works on a local LAN. As soon as I tried to expose my public IP and then share that, I couldn't find the host and there was no talking remotely. And that's really because I have 2 firewalls, 3 routers, and they're all preventing me from talking with the outside world beyond checking my email and going onto Google. So I'm going to do a little bit of research into port forwarding, about configuring routers, write a little document so when you get the app you get a little bit of a crash course in how to get your machine capable of being a host. Things like Google Talk do that for you. It automatically installs those protocols on your system. I'm going to ask that everyone do that manually because, you know, you could spend another 7 weeks just writing network protocols and getting all that stuff set up, or bring in a super genius network programmer, and I'm not one of them. And finally, going to cram in an installer. But there's one thing I just want to add about the installer. When you run the app, install the SDK and install the voice SDK as well. It's installing a lot of stuff on there, and it's going to be very tricky to write one installer that does everything. So my advice is when you get the app, and this is applicable to when you're playing everybody else's apps, just install the SDK and the voice SDK, and then when you get people's apps it'll run nicely. If you don't, and I didn't want to install the SDK, I wanted a nice tight redistributable that I could drop onto an Ultrabook, but it didn't work. There was things missing left, right and centre. So make your life a lot easier and just install the SDKs that we've been using for a couple of weeks now. You haven't seen it yet, but I do apologise in advance for all the crappy videos you're going to see after this, or the little clips. It was taken with this, which is not Steadicam, and it's a bit crazy and grainy. What's worse is my executive camera equipment broke in half. This is it. This is all my camera work. A little tiny tripod and a thing that holds it. And it broke, so that's my excuse why all the camera footage is horrible. And finally, I just want to say, in addition to thank you for listening to me ramble on for so long, I look forward to seeing everybody at GDC. I always have a good time when I fly over to the States, and you'll find that out in the first person. And I'm really looking forward to it, and I'll be at GDC, I'm at the expo, I'm going to be tweeting all the time I'm there. I'm going to be writing code when I'm not there, so it'll be a really fantastic time, and I'm looking forward to meeting all you guys. So until then, this is the end of vlog 5, and I will see you in about 7 days. So I'll see you then. Bye.